There's one radical act in Mark 5 that Jesus performed, breaking the purity laws, and it restored a woman's worth in a way most people completely miss. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how Jesus' response to her teaches us to reclaim our dignity, step into spiritual empowerment, and break free from harmful religious rules. In fact, this is the same shift that helped me personally go from a fear-based idea of God and self, living inauthentically, to being the bold, liberated soul that you encounter today. To go from living under guilt-based religion and self-doubt to experiencing a faith that empowers and heals and affirms my identity. If you're new here, I'm Jason Powell, also known as Reverend Jason, spiritual teacher, gospel artist, and author of Reimagine God. Here we explore scripture through the lens of liberation, empowerment, and radical love. Here in this space, we get to raise our consciousness so we can manifest a more heavenly reality in our minds, in our communities, and in the world. So subscribe to this channel so you never miss the latest video. Now, here's why today's teaching is different from almost everything you've heard on Mark 5. Most sermons focus on the lady's uncleanness, or they even treat her like this passive object of Jesus' power. But my approach today is grounded in progressive interpretations and liberation applications. We're going to center her sense of personal agency and self-direction, not her shame. We're going to highlight how Jesus disrupted oppressive religious systems to restore her worth. I'm going to show you this story as a model for breaking toxic theology, which are toxic ideas of God and self, and reclaiming your divine identity. So listen up, this isn't just a healing story. It's a roadmap for you stepping into spiritual authority and recognizing your inherent value. All right, so for the one big thing today, as you consider everything else I say, I want you to take this one thing away. True spiritual liberation happens when we reject oppressive rules and allow love to redefine our worth. Your spiritual liberation is enacted when you dare to reject oppressive boundaries, oppressive bondage, mentally or spiritually, or relationally, or socially, or religiously, and instead you allow peace, shalom, well-being to define your worth. This idea that there is a divine intention for your highest good, spirit, soul, and body, and you're not here to bury that goodness, you're here to express it. Say, I'm here to express the goodness of God. Can you say that with me again? I'm here to express the goodness of God. Now, this is the radical shift that Jesus taught. Let's get into the text. Now, today I want to read to you from my Amplified Bible. This is the Bible I had when I was in high school, so it's journeyed with me for a while. Mark chapter 5, verse 25, Amplified. And there was a woman who had had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who had endured much suffering under the hands of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but instead grew worse. She had heard the reports concerning Jesus, and she came behind him in the throng and touched his garment. For she kept saying, if I only touch his garments, I shall be restored to health. And immediately her flow of blood was dried up at the source, and suddenly she felt in her body that she was healed of her distressing ailment. And Jesus, recognizing in himself, I'm now in verse 30, that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around immediately in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? And the disciples kept saying to him, you see the crowd pressing hard around you from all the sides, and you ask, who touched me? Still, he kept looking around to see her who had done it. Verse 33, but the woman, knowing what had been done for her, though alarmed and frightened and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your trust and confidence in me, springing from faith in God, has restored you to health. Go into peace, and be continually healed and freed from your distressing bodily disease. Did you see her subconscious reaction after she realized what she had just done? A reaction that was based in the oppressive social and religious culture of the day? After she did all that pressing in faith and activating the divine through her inner words and her actions, after she realized what she had done that was against the oppressive social order of the day, she was alarmed, it says, and frightened, it says, and trembling. She's got a whole range of emotions, from faith and perseverance and tenacity and hope and courage Before that, she had shame and disappointment and despair. And right after expressing these high spiritual qualities and emotions, then she's right up against the oppressive society she lives in as a marginalized woman and as one who has been labeled unclean. And because of that reality, she then begins to be frightened, alarmed, and trembles. But I'm so thankful that that was not her final story. Even though she experienced these range of emotions, she still had a divine encounter and a wonderful transformation. The same can happen for you. But consider this. If she had been bound by those purity laws, those social laws that said she couldn't be public and couldn't touch the rabbi because of her flow of blood, she was labeled unclean and therefore impure, and therefore shouldn't be in public, and therefore should stay within the bounds of what society said. If she had been bound by those purity laws, that would have kept her away from Jesus. And sometimes in our current times, the very things that claim to speak for Jesus, the very institutions and the very perspectives that claim to speak for God, are just like those social purity laws that this lady encountered, that are actually keeping people from God's touch of blessing and God's well-being and the Christ mind transformation, which restores dignity, identity, health, vitality, and purpose. This lady was socially erased, perhaps by some others, yet her courage disrupted the system. Your presence on the planet is designed to disrupt oppressive systems so that greater good can reach the people. And somewhere intuitively, this lady understood that. It was about her, but it wasn't just about her. It was about who she represented and the audacity to claim what she intuitively knew God wanted for her and was willing to hand out. There's a famous liberation theologian who's no longer with us, but his words and ideas remain. He would frame it like this: the gospel of Jesus Christ is the good news for the oppressed, not the validation of the powerful. Now, thankfully, in Jesus' ministry, even those who occupied higher social ranks, like a Zacchaeus, who was a wealthy person, Jesus even powerfully blessed him. And Zacchaeus decided that those who were cheated through his business system, he was going to repay and give some to the poor. And he retained Christ's blessing and continued on his work so far as we know. So Jesus even showed that he wasn't against the wealthy, but he was against oppression. And Jesus made the personal mission statement: the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord's favor, to set the captives free. You'll see that in Luke chapter 4. But sometimes your healing happens once you break oppressive rules. In the political climate, they would call that civil disobedience. Or as U.S. Representative and Civil Rights Leader John Lewis put it, good trouble. Good trouble, or civil disobedience, is taking that risk to challenge an oppressive system for the sheer truth of your identity and your being to exist lovingly, powerfully, boldly among God's diversity in creation. So yeah, there are people who have the thought, well, shouldn't we always obey the rules? Only when those rules and those laws are just. And if they are unjust, do we have the moral obligation and the spiritual responsibility to push against them, to reclaim the beauty of our personal and collective right to exist and be and thrive? You see, rules are not sacred when they harm the vulnerable. A true faith and a real spirituality will prioritize life, including mental life, emotional life, spiritual life, and physical life, and dignity, and love, mutual, consensual love in all of its wonderful expressions. And this way of thinking is real empowerment. Why? Because personal agency over shame culture is the path to realignment and empowerment. This lady initiated the healing by touching Jesus. If she were waiting passively, she would have denied her personal agency and thereby denied her ability to make contact with her transformation, which would have also been a further upholding of the social laws that oppressed not only her, but those she represented. So her action forward made a difference not only for herself, but for all those who hear her story and dare to reach forward. Her identity shifted when she acted in faith. And your identity and presence shifts when you move in faith. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence. Some might think that boldness is prideful in the negative way. Pride in the positive way is dignity and having self-respect and responsibility, having some pride about yourself and your environment and your work and your habitat. A negative form of pride, however, is ego-based with no respect for the unseen realm, with no respect for spirit in yourself or in others, with no respect for the laws of spirit or the laws of mind and how this impacts our unfolding lives and world, with a refusal to respect the realm of the unseen and or the dignity in others. So no, this kind of boldness is an act of God's faith working in you. Boldness in faith is reclaiming your worth. It's not asserting superiority. It's reclaiming dignity. And isn't that the beautiful thing? This dignity has to do with your worth. When she made contact with Jesus, love embodied, her worth was restored. When you make contact with love embodied, your worth is restored. That's what it feels like when you're loved well and loved good. And when you love well and love good, there's a restoration of worth. There's a recognition of worth. Notice that Jesus did not condemn her for breaking these purity social laws. Her natural mind actually thought that that might have happened, which is why she started to be trembling and fearful, because she was breaking the purity laws in the name of faith, the audacity of her faith. But our Jesus affirmed her as daughter, and he restored her social and spiritual value. That's why I love what I find in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And I even had my daughter make a short reel about this years ago. God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Power, love, self-control, sound mind, restored dignity and worth, and personal agency to walk in love. This is powerful and world shifting. Notice her healing wasn't about her obedience, as if she was supposed to bow her entire will and stay stuck and wait for Jesus to come to her. Instead of obeying the outer social law, which was oppressing people, she obeyed the divine law within. She obeyed the higher laws of mind and spirit, which were toward her well-being without depriving anyone else of their good. This healing, this transformation is about reclaiming identity, not following oppressive rules. Whether it's in your own family, your religious institution, your own mind, and on and on. Your freedom starts inside. And that's what we've begun to awaken today. So, if this one radical act of love can restore worth to someone that society erased, can you imagine what this one radical act of love can do in your life? It's time, my dear friend, to reclaim your worth, to break free from toxic theology, which includes toxic ideas of God and self, and it's time to step into empowerment and spiritual freedom. That's why I created Reimagine God for You. It goes deep into this kind of liberation. Stories in my own life and others, revelations from scripture, and my path to breaking free from toxic theology and manifesting the divine power within, so that we can manifest abundance, purpose, and a more just world. So you can grab the book plus the audiobook bundle and begin listening immediately, reading on your mobile device or searching for specific words or phrases that stand out to you, and having the paperback when you don't want your eyes in a device so that you can highlight and write on the margins. I always like to write my special insights that I get on the margins of a page, because then I have a personal experience with it and can come back to it. And so as you get this book bundle, read the stories, hear the insights, and also get the bonus activation exercises. Oh, and before you go, while you're at it, check out the next playlist, which is a collection of teachings to take you further in the journey. So hit the link below, get the bundle today, and like and comment and share if this video helped you see Jesus in a radically new way. Remember, when you reimagine God, you reimagine yourself and the world you live in. See you in the next video.